To you, everybody. There are just 3.5 hours now to go until the polls will close across the state of New York. We'll try to move on here if we can. We're going to tell you about a lot of important races that are on the ballot, all of which will have an impact on you for years to come, from local races where you live to, of course, federal races for the House and the Senate, a lot on the line. And then the most watched, that's for New York governor. Once polls close at 9 o'clock, you'll be able to see this map kind of color in as we start to get some results. And all night long, we'll be taking you county by county. Incumbent Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul facing a challenge from Republican Lee Zeldin. Both of them have been campaigning pretty hard around the clock, especially over the last couple of weeks. Governor Hochul spent her morning today in New York City, making a final push to voters. She cast her ballot here in Buffalo on the first day of early voting. Meanwhile, Zeldin voted in person on Election Day this morning in his hometown of Long Island. Coming up at 6 o'clock, we'll take you back live to New York City. We'll talk with Claudine Ewing and Rob Hackford, who are both following the race from the Big Apple. First, though, want to touch on what's happening here in Western New York. And joining us live for that right now is Ralph Moore. He is the Republican Elections Commissioner in Erie County. Ralph, it's great to have you on, and I know you and your Democratic counterpart work hand in hand. And we appreciate you taking some time for us because this is your busy season. I wonder if we can start with voter enthusiasm. That is always important in races like what we're dealing with tonight. Any sense right now of what turnout is in Erie County?
Well, we have a very strong turnout. So far, over 280,000 voters in Erie County have cast their ballots, and we still have 3.5 hours of voting to go. We're well on target to exceed what occurred in 2018 when we had 345,000 voters casting ballots in Erie County. So it's been a very strong voter turnout, very steady all day long. And in addition to that, we've noticed an increase in the number of first-time and not so frequent voters.
Yeah, interesting that you can kind of analyze that data in real time nowadays, which is very helpful as you kind of understand what's happening out there. Wonder if there have been any issues at polling places in Erie County. I know that there's nothing, widespread or big happening right now, but oftentimes with every election and pretty much every municipality around the country, there can be tiny little issues here and there. Anything that our viewers should know about tonight?
Well, that's what they are, tiny little issues. There are a few polling places that have lines, but again, Erie County has over half the county scheduled with the electronic poll books. So the average check-in time is between 40 seconds and a minute, 15 seconds. So it goes very quickly, the lines. In addition to that, when you have a strong voter turnout and you have a lot of first-time voters coming in, we do have some instances, although it's not widespread, but we have had instances of some paper jams, and our board employees are on top of that and go right out. That's the one area which has seen a lot of misinformation being spread today, because when the paper jam occurs and you're not able to feed the ballot into the normal slot, what we do is we open an emergency bin in the voting machine and the ballots get deposited there. All of those ballots are counted. All of those ballots are following the same procedure as the other ballots that are cast. So nobody should be afraid of voting, whether the machine is operating, which the vast majority of the machines are operating, or if it's down for a very brief period of time.
Yeah, great to know that, Ralph. What can we expect in terms of how we're going to get the results tonight? It's different every election. I know you guys have worked really hard at putting out not just information quicker, but also more information. Your website is a great resource on election night to see kind of where the vote is in, where you're still waiting on the vote. How do you expect that to play out tonight?
Very much the same way that we have in the past two elections. We've been working over the last 2 years to improve our website and to make sure that it's as ironclad as possible. We have backups in place in case some kind of power interruption occurs, but we haven't had that so far. What we've done is developed a process where it's going to be a lot quicker results. Instead of having to drive a chip from Sardinia to the city of Buffalo, we've established locations where our employees are, where the chips from the voting precinct is brought to a localized area and then transmitted to the Board of Elections. So that gets the results in much quicker, and it gets us able to go and put it out to the public much faster as well.
Finally, Ralph, can you update our viewers on how absentee ballots and mail-in ballots are going to be counted? I know there have been some changes, and especially if we have races that are close, it certainly can all come down to that. We used to have to wait even longer to get those results.
Well, that is the one big change that the state legislature made this year, was to the counting of absentee ballots. It used to be for almost 100 years that you could vote absentee, and then if circumstances changed, such as your illness got better or you thought you were going out of the county but you then found out you weren't, you could go to the polls and cast your ballot on election day at the polling place. You no longer can do that, and the absentee ballots are counted and reported tonight. All of those ballots which have been received up through yesterday. Absentee ballots, if they're still sitting on the kitchen table, can be postmarked today and have up to 7 days to be returned to the Board of Elections. If you're in the military, overseas personnel, you have 13 days to have those ballots returned, provided that they're postmarked today. But the one thing that you should note is that if you applied for an absentee ballot and were issued one, you're no longer able to go to the polls on election day. Your absentee ballot is your vote.
Yeah, you'd have to do an affidavit ballot at that point, right? If you kind of changed your mind, and then it gets a little bit more complicated. But good to know that tonight we'll get at least the vast majority of the absentee ballots, the mail-in ballots, to be counted tonight, as opposed to having to wait for all of them. Ralph Moore is the Republican Elections Commissioner in Erie County. Thanks so much for coming on, and best of luck to you over the next 3 hours, 23 minutes, and 3 seconds.
Thank you.
Meantime, in Chautauqua County, more than 17,000 people have already voted as of around 4 o'clock this afternoon when we got our last update. The Republican commissioner for that county's Board of Elections told us that they have had a few computer glitches and a few of their machines got jammed. That's the standard stuff we just talked about in Erie County. But Commissioner Brian Abrams said the biggest problem was that voters were mixing up where they could vote today.
A lot of confusion from voters about exactly where they vote. If they're new, they've just moved in. The balance between early voting and election day voting still is a little bit confusing. I think we'll still end up globally around the same numbers that we're used to in gubernatorial years. We're just getting them in a different pace. Early voting and absentee, it looks like it will take a significant portion of the election day totals. So we will have close to, between 9,000 and 10,000 people who've already cast their ballot here in Chautauqua County before the day even started. Early voting has been the most popular. I think it's growing. I think people are getting used to it. I think you'll see a steady growth of people who are going to become comfortable, and the new voters will be more likely to gravitate towards it because that's going to be the normal.
He expects that they're going to get a rush of voters right after dinner time. So if you want to wait until a little bit later tonight, you might see some shorter lines. And Abrams said if you are a new voter or if you're new to Chautauqua County and you don't know where to go to vote, you can obviously give them a call. We have the number right there at the bottom of your screen, 716-753-4226. That number is easily found on Google if you look it up. And again, polls close tonight at 9 o'clock.